The airlock hissed as it cycled, and the hatch slid aside with a reluctant shudder. Ray staggered through it. Blood had dried in a rusty streak at her temple, flaking at the edges. A bruise was already blooming across her left cheekbone, purple-black and ugly under the white glare of the medical bay lights. The harsh, sterile illumination made everything look worse, every bruise deeper, every cut more dramatic. She knew that. She also knew it didn't matter, because half the crew was waiting for her. They clustered near the entrance engineers in grease-stained coveralls, bridge officers still in crisp uniforms, a few curious techs who'd clearly wandered past. Conversations died the moment she stepped in. The hum of monitors and the soft chime of vitals were suddenly very loud. Names. The word came out low and rough from Tin. He was barely 4 feet tall, standing upright on digitigrade legs, thick tawny fur along his spine bristling so sharply it looked like it might crackle with static. His species, the Yashir, were famous across 7 sectors as diplomats, mediators, voices of calm on interstellar channels. There was a well-worn saying, "If the Yashir can't talk them down, no one can." Tin did not look like someone who wanted to talk. His ears were flattened tight to his skull. His tail lashed behind him in short, whip-like arcs. Ray blinked against the lights. She let one hand slide along the wall to steady herself, ignoring how the station's artificial gravity tugged at bruised muscles. "Names," she echoed hoarsely. "Tin, I'm fine. It's just, you are not fine," another voice cut in. Sella shouldered her way through the gathered bodies, small and determined. She was Tin's littermate, softer in build, rounder in the face, with fur a shade lighter than his. Normally her expression was open and gentle, her claws carefully retracted. Not now. Now those claws were out, glinting under the medbay lights. "You left for a simple negotiation," Sella said, her voice pitched high with emotion. "You come back bleeding. Someone hurt you." The human negotiator tried to give them her usual crooked grin. The motion tugged on her bruised cheekbone and sent a sharp throb through her ribs. She abandoned the attempt halfway. "Really? It's nothing," Ray said. Misunderstanding with some Kravik traders. They were enthusiastic about tariff discussions. "Names," Tin repeated. This time the word carried weight. It sounded older than the ship, older than the station, older than human history in space. A few of the bridge officers shifted their footing, the faintest rustle of uniforms against uniforms. Nobody quite met Tin's eyes. The Yashir had been spacefaring for 3,000 years before humans ever left their birth world. They remembered empires that had risen and fallen, while humanity was still arguing about orbital launches. They remembered, too, what they had been before they learned diplomacy. Ray heard that in Tin's voice, the echo of ancient pack hunts across dark forests under alien moons. "Give us names," he said. She exhaled slowly and finally allowed the medical officer to herd her onto a padded bench. Her knees were shakier than she liked to admit. The med scanner hummed as it started its routine. "The Kravik got in a lucky hit before security broke it up," Ray said, forcing herself to sound casual. "Station authorities have it under control. Bruised pride, bruised face, no long-term damage." She looked up and fully took in the room the two quiet crew, the tense lines of Yashir bodies, Sellers' claws, Tin's flattened ears, and realized she'd badly misjudged things. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years, half a century, barely a flicker on the timelines of species that measured their history in millennia. They'd arrived with ships that were loud and inelegant by galactic standards, and opinions that were even louder. They made friends where they had no business making friends, between rivals, between old enemies, between people who had spent generations avoiding one another's borders. They hoarded languages like souvenirs. They hurled themselves into danger with a recklessness that made more cautious species deeply uncomfortable. They adopted customs just to see what would happen, and somewhere along the way, the galaxy had started to care what happened to them. That, Ray thought grimly, was the problem. "Listen," she said carefully. "I appreciate the concern. I do. But this is literally my job. Negotiations get heated. I've had worse in the gym on a bad sparring day." "Not the point," Sella burst out. Her voice cracked on the last word. She stepped closer, her whiskers quivering, pupils wide with distress. "You are part of this crew," Sella said. "Our crew. Our pack." The word hit the air like a physical object. Pack. The Yashir didn't toss that word around. It meant more than friend, more than colleague, more than family in the human sense. It meant mine in a way that implied claws and teeth and unbreakable loyalty. Ray had been assigned to the Wandering Star 2 years ago. Officially, she was a human liaison, a flexible social tool in a galaxy of cultures that often struggled to understand one another. Humans excelled at that kind of thing. Reading tone, deciphering body language, understanding subtext that other species missed, improvising where logic alone failed. But somewhere between the first awkward shared meal and the night she'd stayed awake to help Sella through an anxiety cycle, something had shifted. She'd memorized Tin's preferred thermal settings and made sure his quarters were always a degree warmer than ship standard. She knew that Sella couldn't sleep without the sound of moving water, and had argued with engineering to reroute a small trickle through the wall panel. She'd stood in silence beside them in the observatory when news came that their clutch father had died 3 systems away, singing morning songs with them until her human vocal cords gave out and the notes came out wobbling and wrong, and the crew had adapted around her in turn. Her coffee, real earth coffee, not the terrible substitute the station sold, always appeared in the galley, even though importing it this far from Seoul cost a ridiculous amount in trade points. The ship's lighting cycle had been subtly altered to better align with human circadian rhythms. People had learned, sometimes awkwardly, to offer casual touches on the shoulder or forearm because they realized humans needed that physical reassurance, that anchor to feel safe. They had become pack, all of them. "The Kravik who hit you," Tin said, his voice dropping into something dangerously quiet. "What was his name?" "I'm not telling you that." Ray folded her arms. Immediately regretted it when pain flared along her side, and tried to pretend she hadn't just winced. "Because I know exactly what you'll do. And I'm not being responsible for you starting an interstellar incident over 1 punch. 3 punches, The medical officer put in helpfully, eyes on the scan. Cracked rib, mild concussion, and significant soft tissue trauma. Ray turned her head and nailed him with a look that, under different circumstances, had made admirals back off. He cleared his throat and very pointedly found something else to look at. Tin rocked back on his haunches. His tail still twitched, but the motion was shorter now, controlled. "You don't understand," he said. "You're ours." He seemed to stumble over the words, grasping for the right phrase in trade common. "Ours to protect, ours to defend," he continued. "The Kravik hurt you. That requires response. I am not a possession," Ray said. There was more bite in her voice than she meant, sharpened by headache and pain. "That is not what I meant." For the first time, his anger fractured, showing something raw beneath it. His ears flicked up and then down again. "Humans," Tin said quietly, "you don't see it. How valuable you are." Ray opened her mouth to make a joke, to deflect. Tin barreled on. "Not in credits, not in trade agreements or treaties," he said. "You, Ray, you who learned our language when others decided trade was enough. You who sits with Sella through her anxiety cycles. You who makes terrible jokes during engine failure drills and somehow calms everyone down." Sella moved closer until her small hand rested, light and warm, on Ray's knee. Her claws had retracted, but the tension hadn't left her shoulders. "We are not many," Sella said softly. "Our people. We know the value of each pack member very well. You are pack, even if you are weird, and too tall, and eat things that would poison us." Despite everything, the throbbing headache, the ache in her ribs, the sting of dried blood, Ray laughed. It hurt. It was worth it. The Kravik captain already filed a formal apology, she admitted. Station security has them flagged and fined. They'll think twice about trying to intimidate a human negotiator again. It is handled. Tin said slowly, tasting the words, clearly not liking their flavor. "But you are hurt." "Yeah," Ray said. "But I've got the best crew in 7 sectors helping me heal." She lifted a hand and threaded her fingers through the fur between Sella's ears, stroking the way the Yashir preferred, firm, steady, just enough pressure to be grounding. Sella's shoulders loosened by a noticeable fraction. "And next time," Ray added, "I'll duck faster." Tin's ears finally eased up from their flattened position. His tail twitched once more, then settled in a slow, thoughtful sway. "Next time," he said, "you take backup. Me. I am excellent at looking intimidating. You are 4 feet tall," Ray pointed out. "I am terrifying," he said with absolute sincerity. He bared his teeth in a display that would have read as a snarl to most humans, but that Ray knew was a Yashir version of a fierce grin. "Ask anyone. I once made a Thorian warlord apologize for using the wrong fork." "Different category of terrifying," Ray muttered, but she was smiling now, the tension in her shoulders easing. The medic finished his scan, injected a painkiller with practiced efficiency, and pronounced her fit for duty with rest, hydration, and no heroics for at least 48 standard hours. The crowd began to thin as people drifted back to their shifts, conversations slowly restarting in low tones. The oppressive weight in the room lightened, the air feeling less thick. Tin and Sella didn't move. Humans are strange, Tin said eventually, as if they hadn't thoroughly established that several times already. You joined the galactic community, and within one generation, you made everyone care. He said the last word like it tasted dangerous. You made us vulnerable, he went on. We were fine before. We kept to our own kind, our own borders, our own wars and peace. It was simpler, and now? Ray asked quietly. Sella pressed closer, leaning against Ray's uninjured side. For the Yashir, that kind of contact was the equivalent of an embrace, done only with Pack. Now we have Pack, Sella said. Inconvenient, terrifying, wonderful Pack. Ray closed her eyes for a moment. She felt Sella's warmth against her, Tin's compact presence standing guard on the other side. The hum of the wandering star's life support systems all round them. The galaxy outside was huge and cold. Trade routes twisted through hostile space. Old grudges simmered along borders. Somewhere out there, the Kravik traders were nursing their own bruises and resentments. But here, in this overlit medical bay on a ship full of aliens, she had people who would threaten interstellar incidents over her cracked rib. She'd never felt more at home. For the record, she said at last, eyes still closed, I'm still not giving you the names. We will get them from station security, Tin replied cheerfully, his tone far too innocent. Tin, Ray groaned. Just to send a strongly worded letter, he added. Very diplomatic, very proper. He was absolutely lying. She knew it. He knew she knew it. She also knew she was too exhausted and too comfortable, surrounded by her ridiculous, overprotective, wonderful Pack to argue. A strongly worded letter from a Yashir diplomat, backed by the quiet knowledge that a human would walk into danger for them, and a crew that would burn through a fleet for her, wasn't the worst thing in the galaxy. After all, that was what Pack did. They protected their own.